Hi, seventh graders. It's Miss Jenkins again, and today we're going to take your pre-writing outline and move to the first draft. And you really do have to stick by your outline as much as possible for organizational purposes. So we're going to make sure we keep that right close by. So you need your outline from yesterday. You need a new blank sheet of paper. Actually, you're going to need two blank sheets of paper. You need to put your name, date, class, and title across the top, just like I'm doing here. And then you need a highlighter. So you need a highlighter because we're going to use the highlighter to mark the lines of the margin to help us keep a track of how much we're writing. This is not only good for organizational purposes, but it's also good for pacing yourself to make sure that the introduction part, the beginning of the essay, the middle of the essay, the ending of the essay, and then the conclusion parts all have the proper amount of attention paid to it. So this first line I'm marking has about 8 lines in it, and those first 8 lines, as you can see at the top of the page, will be for my introduction paragraph. The introduction tends to be small, and so that's why it only has 8 lines. Now you see the second set of lines I have given to you go down to the bottom of the page, basically. It's more than double the space of the introduction, and this is the first body paragraph and represents the beginning of the story you're writing. So now I'm going to flip this page over because I can write on the back side for a rough draft, and I'm going to go down 2/3 of the way of the page and mark the margin 2/3 of the way down. All of this space will be for my second body paragraph. The second body paragraph represents the middle part of the story I'm retelling, what happens as the story continues on. And then I'm going to move down to the bottom of the page and use those bottom few lines that are left, and then I'm going to need to move over to my second piece of the paper. But at the bottom here, I write third body paragraph. This represents the end of the story I'm telling. The end, how does it all end up? I have to continue on to the second sheet of paper to get the rest of my third body paragraph in because you need probably about 15 lines here. So here are the rest of the third body paragraph lines. I'm going to write third body paragraph continued. I'm so sorry that got cut off a little bit, but it says third body paragraph continued, and this is where I'll finish up my third body paragraph. Finally, I'm going to use the remaining 8 lines for a conclusion. The conclusion should be the shortest paragraph of the 5 because you're not adding any new or pivotal information. You're just wrapping up, telling what you learned, telling how the story changed you. Okay, so now would be a good time for you to pause the video while you finish highlighting the margins and counting up your lines, and then come back. Okay, so now we are ready to start writing the first draft, and I'm going to stick by my pre-writing outline as much as possible. The first thing to do is to write something called a thesis statement, and I write the thesis statement using Roman numeral 1 without adding a lot of small detail about the event. I just state what the time I was afraid was. And so here it is. I start by saying, everyone has fears and everyone gets scared. The time I was afraid was when I ran a marathon. So that statement right there, the time I was afraid was when I ran a marathon, that is called my thesis statement. That identifies the topic, which is a time I was afraid, and it identifies the actual time I was afraid. The sentence before was just a little warm-up lead-in statement. You can have that or something like that, or you don't have to have that. It's completely up to you. Now I move on to include my A, B, and C. Remember, A represents the beginning of this whole situation, B represents the middle, and C represents how this personal narrative story ends up. So let's start with A. A on my outline said, I was asked, I resisted. And so in my paragraph, I say, I ran a marathon. Oh no, sorry. At the end of it all, I did run in the race, but at first I have resisted. So that comes from Roman numeral 1A. Now I have to incorporate Roman numeral 1B, which is I promise to run next year. So in my essay I said, with pressure building from a family member, I finally agreed. So I don't want to say much more than that because, again, that's going to be for my body. So I just want to state that I made the promise and I agreed to run in the race. And then Roman numeral 1C is me actually running the race in the next year. So in my introduction I say, I finally agreed. A year later, the time had come, the time came, and I ran. So that's just me saying how this ends up. This story ends when I actually run the race. So there is my introduction. Okay, so this would be a good time to pause the video to catch up with anything you need to before we move on to the first body paragraph. Then come back. Okay, we're back. So we need to run through the beginning of my narrative, which would be the first body paragraph. And as you can see, I'm sticking with my outline. I still have it right here with me, and I'm going to write from Roman numeral 2. This was all about me being asked to run in the race and resisting the request and saying no. So I start off from my outline to my first body paragraph by making a topic sentence. It all started in spring 2015. My niece asked me to run in the Ragnar relay. That really is my topic sentence there. That my niece asked me to run in the Ragnar relay, that's the topic sentence, because this whole paragraph is going to be about her asking me to run and me saying no. Now I have to give some details about it, because if I just say no, of course I'm not going to fill up this page. So I'm going to give you right now all of the different ways I said no and all the different reasons that I said no to her. So I continue on by saying, that year it was in Washington, D.C. As in all Ragnar relays, it was 220 plus miles divided between 10 runners. I go on to say, since I am not a distance runner, I said no. I let her know that I didn't think I could run 26 plus miles. I also told her I don't really like team competition. I am more of an individual person. I also refused because I was basically flat out scared. I did not admit this to her, but that was the real reason for my refusal. So now I get to Roman numeral 2C. And in 2C, I wrap up this beginning part of my story by saying she ran the race without me. But again, I've got to add a little extra detail to it so that I can make it to the bottom of my highlight. So Roman numeral 2C said she ran the marathon without me in 2015, and I'm going to go back to my first body paragraph where, and I start off by saying, so she ran the 2015 Ragnar relay without me. She recruited other team members. After she had run it, she told me how awesome it was and how she wished I could have experienced it. Okay, so once again, as I wind down my writing, it's time for you to pause the video and work on your second body paragraph. You can rewind this as much as you need to, but take your time and just draft through your first body paragraph, adding lots of details as you go. Then come back.